Hey everybody, this is Patrick McNeil from Oak City Locksport, and welcome back. Today in episode 3, we are going to take a lock apart, and I'll show you how to make a progressive lock kit. So, where we're going to start is looking at the various types of cylinders and how to get at them from the hardware you've been donated or perhaps the hardware that you've purchased. And first, let's start off with the kick cylinders here. So you'll see that there are two different types of back ends, and of course this isn't coming into focus. There we go. This is a quick set which happens to be unlocked already. This is one of my 1-pin, and this is a Schlage. So what to focus on here is this has a circlip on the back, so this needs to be popped off in order to pull the core out. On this style, we need to screw that cap off. So of course, when you're given some hardware, getting at that lock can be a little bit of the interesting part, especially if you're not familiar with lock hardware like this. So this is a Schlage deadbolt, and this one looks fairly obvious. There's a big screw right there, and you can see something that looks like a kick cylinder in there. So we can just take that one screw out, pop it out, and then we need to remove this tailpiece. And basically the way you do that is just by sliding this part off, and then you're going to press in on this little pin here as you spin the cap off. And once you get the cap off, this entire tailpiece section will just come right out. For a handle set, this can be a little bit less obvious. So you might see this little divot kind of pin thing here, if I can get this to focus. There we go, right there. And you would think you just push in on that, right, and the handle should pop right off, releasing the lock here. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And there's a good reason for that, because this is locked right now, and we certainly wouldn't want anybody outside of our house to be able to just pop the door handle off and take the lock out. So what you have to do first is unlock this from the rear so that the handle turns freely. And once you do that, then yes, you can push in on that and pop the door handle off. So now you can see the back of our kick cylinder in there. And on this particular doorknob, we can see that this pops off, and then you can pull the kick cylinder out. And this happens to have a circlip on it. So if you're purchasing new kick cylinders, because these are fairly inexpensive, when you get them, they'll have keys, so you can very easily open them. And what you may notice, when I purchased these, they were all listed as 5-pin kick cylinders. However, if we take a look at this 1-pin that I've already got unlocked, and we will just push on this small pin here and spin the outer rim to take the back off. Be very careful to release that very gently. And I'm just using a basic hook to push down on this pin. There's a spring behind that, so that pin could pop out. So now we're going to take the pin out, and you see here the spring actually stuck right to the bottom of this, because there's actually a little smaller part of the pin, so it'll fit into the spring. So now very carefully, we're going to take a plug follower, and notice how the key opening is facing. So the pins are going to be up top here. I've rotated it 90 degrees, and I'm going to push the plug follower in, so the key pins are going to be up top here and not fall out, and all the driver pins are stuck inside the Bible, which is the top portion of the lock here. So you'll notice, and what I was trying to get to here, is that this actually has 6 holes. So we're reusing some critical components here, the core, for either a 5-pin or a 6-pin lock. So in this case, this also has enough holes in the Bible so that you could put in extra key pins and extra driver pins to make yourself a 6-pin progressive lock. So when we look at trying to take apart a lock that we don't have a key for, what do? So this is a cutaway lock, and you can see here you've got, if I can get this to focus, you've got a spring, and you can see the driver pin. And in this case, I've got a bunch of spool pins in here. If I could get them to move around for you. Here we go. So you can see there in pin chamber 3 that's moving up and down, there's a spool pin in there. So when we want to take this apart, we need to use the shim that I mentioned in the last episode. So same here. Let's press this pin down and take the back off. And dump that spring out here. Okay, now you may be able to see right in here, there's a very, very narrow kind of opening right there, and that's where we're going to take our shim, which sometimes is hard to pick up here. And first things first, let's line it up on the lock body, and it will not go any further than that. So basically to the front where it runs into the face of the core. And so what we can do is just use a Sharpie and put one little mark right here. So I know I don't have to insert that shim any further than that. So now we will set it down and very gently slide it in so it just runs into the first pin. Now the trick to this is just very gently tapping it on the back while using a hook to raise the pins in back. And what you need to do is overlift the pin, and then you give it a little tap and it slides in. So I got the back pin. Now moving on to the next pin. Now you may be able to see this as I'm pushing up on it, it's not going up all the way. And the reason is because this is a spool pin, and the end of this material is getting trapped underneath the extra part of the spool. So what I need to do is very gently pull out. You probably didn't even see how much I pulled out because it was not much at all. And now I'm going to push this up and overlift it, push in. Okay, so it's just slid in a bunch. Come on. And because these two pins are the same length, it slid past both of them because part of my pick was touching it. And now I'm going to go after the next pin. It's also a spool pin, so I'm caught on it. Boy, I'm having focus issues. Okay, so I'm going to press past that. The next one is flat. It's not a driver pin, or it's not a spool pin, so we don't have any problems with it. And then the very last one, oops. So that's the thing. You need to make sure that as you're pushing on this, you don't accidentally push the core out at the same time. So now that I've got this past all of the pins. It's trapped in between all of the drivers and the key pins. I can rotate the core, very gently slide this out, and now I could use my plug follower to just push through this.
Now let's shim a real lock quickly, since you're familiar with the concept. So the one thing I forgot to tell you was you might need a pair of pliers to remove the circlip if you don't have a circlip removal tool. And there we took off the tailpiece. There's our shim, which we'll insert, apply some very light pressure on the back, and then start touching the pins, working from the back, moving towards the front, one by one, and when we feel it slide in a little bit, move on to the next pin. Now it looks like I got stuck on a pin, so I pull it out very slightly and keep going, working slowly forward. I'm almost there. Looks like maybe one more position. Trying to find the pins here. That second pin appears to be a little caught up. And now working on the first pin, and we've got an open.
Okay, so now that we have this shimmed, we can make any number of one of these progressive or progressively pinned cylinders out of this. This is a 6-pin lock, but let's go ahead and make a 3-pin with this. So make sure that top of the keyway is facing up, so we know the key pins are going to be up here on top. And hold on to the plug so it doesn't pop out. Slide the shim out, put that aside, and let's grab a plug follower, and we'll just push this through. Okay, set that down, just put this aside. So given that we're making a 3, I could choose to keep the first 3 pins if I want. In this case, I like to go one back, just a personal preference thing, make it a little bit more challenging. So let's dump the first pin and the last 2. Okay, so those are gone, and we just have those 3 left. Now we have to do the same thing with the driver pins and springs in the Bible. So 1 in front and 2 in back. So we'll go ahead and put our thumb over this and pull it out real slow. Listen for the click. Okay, so there is our driver pin there. Driver pin and spring, and then basically we can just push this right back through, flip it around, and go on the other side. Now note this has a notch here, so I have to be careful to keep the flat spot over the Bible. All right. And there's my spring. One more. Okay, so now I'm just going to push this back through, and again turn it to the side so I can reinsert the plug facing upward and not lose any of those key pins. And now when we turn it, it'll click in place and it's good to go. Now I'm not going to put the back piece on here again, no need for that. And I will just put the circlip back on, and we're good to go. There's our 3-pin Progressive Lock.
Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe to follow along.